For today's story, we learn about a corrupt DEA agent. The DEA has a lot of contacts with cartels, mostly for the purpose of trying to take down the cartels. But one DEA agent decided to use his power to launder money and just help the cartels and basically just go on a massive party. And look at him, he's having such a fun time. We're going to learn about the exploits of this DEA and how he's potentially the most corrupt agent, although we'll see about that. Let's learn a little bit more about bro guy over here. Jose Izari accepts that he's known as the most corrupt agent in US DEA history, admitting he became another man in conspiring with Colombian cartels to build a lavish lifestyle of expensive sports cars, Tiffany jewels, and paramours around the world. Well, he's living that life, man. But as he used his final hours of freedom to tell his story to the Associated Press, Izari says that he won't go down for this alone, accusing some long-trusted DEA colleagues of joining him in skimming millions of dollars. But as he used his final hours of freedom to tell his story to the Associated Press, Izari says that he won't go down for this alone, accusing some long-trusted DEA colleagues of joining him in skimming millions of dollars from drug money laundering stings to fund decades worth of luxury overseas travel, fine dining, top seats at sporting events, and frat house-style debauchery. The way Izari tells it, dozens of other federal agents, prosecutors, informants, and in some cases, cartel smugglers themselves were all in on this three-continent joyride known as Team America, that's cute, that chose cities for money laundering pickups mostly for party purposes or to coincide with Real Madrid soccer or Rafael Nadal tennis matches. That includes stops along the way in VIP rooms of the Caribbean strip joints, Amsterdam red light districts, and aboard a Colombian yacht that launched with plenty of booze and more than a dozen prostitutes. Lol. We had free access to do whatever we want, said the 48-year-old Izari. I mean, he was living his best life. I mean, he's going to pay for it for the back half of his life, but you know, man, he rode it rich. Before beginning a 12-year prison sentence. I guess this is a good question at this point. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? 12-year federal prison sentence when you get to live up all this life of luxury with the paramours and the games and stuff and all the rest of it? I mean, you know, is it worth 12 years of federal time? You guys can argue amongst yourselves. Joe Izari accepts that he's the most corrupt agent in history, but he says he wasn't alone in conspiring with the members to use the war on drugs to fund lavish, decadent lifestyles. All this revelry was rooted, Izari said, in a crushing realization among DEA agents around the world that there's nothing they can do to make a dent in the drug war anyway. Only nominal concerns were given to actually building cases or stemming a record flow of illegal cocaine and opioids into the United States that's driven 100,000 drug deaths. You can't win an unwinnable war. DEA knows this and the agents know it, Izari says. There's so much dope leaving Colombia and there's so much money, we're not making a difference. The drug war is a game. It was a very fun game that we're playing. I mean, sounds like he thought at least that he's living his best life. Izari's story, where some former colleagues have attacked as a fictionalized attempt to reduce his sentence, came in the days of contrite, bitter, sometimes tearful interviews with the AP in historic quarter of his native San Juan. It was much more the same account he gave the FBI in lengthy debriefings and sealed court papers obtained by AP after he pled guilty to 19 corruption counts, including money laundering and bank fraud. I mean, you know, and that's probably only the half of it, really. And 12 years in federal prison? I mean, you know? And you do like 80% time, so he gets out in about 9 years? Yeah. But after years of portraying Izari as a rogue agent who acted alone, the Justice Department's investigators have in recent months began closely following his confessional roadmap, questioning as many as 24 current and former DEA agents and prosecutors accused by Izari of turning a blind eye to his flagrant abuses and sometimes joining in. With little fanfare, the inquiry has focused on jet-setting former partner of Izari and several other trusted DEA colleagues assigned to international money laundering. And at least 3 current and former federal prosecutors have faced questioning about Izari's reckless parties, including one still in a senior role in Miami, another who appeared on TV's The Bachelorette, and a former Ohio prosecutor who was confirmed to serve as the U.S. attorney in Cleveland before backing out for unspecified family reasons. Okay. The expanding investigation comes as the nation's premier law enforcement agency for narcotics has been rattled by repeated misconduct scandals in its 4,600 agent ranks. From one who took bribes with traffickers, to another who is accused of leaking confidential information to law enforcement targets. But by far the biggest black eye is Azari, whose wholesale betrayal of his badge is at the heart of ongoing external review of DEA's sprawling foreign operations in 69 countries. The once standout agent has accused some former colleagues in DEA Miami-based Group 4 of lining their pockets and falsifying records to replenish a slush fund used for foreign jaunts over a better part of a decade until his resignation in 2018. He accused U.S. Customs Enforcement agent of accepting a $20,000 bribe. And recently, the FBI, Office of the Inspector General, and federal prosecutors have interviewed Azari in prison about other federal employees and allegations he raised about misconduct in maritime interdictions. It seems like he gets around. It was too outlandish for them to believe this was actually happening, Azari said. The indictment paints a picture of me, the corrupt agent that did this entire scheme. But it doesn't talk about the rest of DEA. I wasn't the mastermind. Well, that much I believe. The federal judge in Tampa who sentenced Azari last year seemed to agree, saying other agents corrupted by the allure of easy money need to be investigated. This has to be stopped, the judge said, and that Azari was the one who got caught, but it's apparent to this court that there are others. The Justice Department has declined to comment. A DEA spokesman has said, Joe Azari is a criminal who violated his oath as federal law enforcement officer and violated the trust of the American people. Over the past 16 months, the DEA has worked vigorously to further strengthen our discipline and hiring policies to ensure the integrity and effectiveness of our essential work. I don't know about that. The AP, for its part, was able to corroborate some, but not all, the accusations through thousands of confidential law enforcement records and dozens of interviews with those familiar with claims and ongoing investigation, including several who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized. The probe is focused on part on George Zomboros, one of Azari's former partners who traveled overseas extensively for former money laundering operations. Azari told Associated Press that Zomboros enjoyed unfettered access to so-called commission funds and improperly tapped that money for personal purchases and unwarranted trips using the name of people that didn't exist in DEA reports to justify the excess. Zomboros remained a DEA agent after he was arrested, nice, and briefly detained on allegations of sexual assault. He resigned only after being stripped of his gun, badge, and security clearance for invoking his Fifth Amendment right to stay silent, good for him, when the same prosecutor who charged Azari summoned him to testify before a federal grand jury. Good for you for invoking your Fifth Amendment rights, man. Good for you. You stand on those rights. Authorities are focused on Zomboros. They also subpoenaed his brother, a Florida wedding photographer who traveled and partied around the world with the DEA, and even granted him immunity to induce cooperation. But Michael Zomboros has refused to testify and jailed outside since for civil contempt. So they granted his brother immunity and he still won't testify. So they throw him in jail until he'll cooperate. So, okay, we'll see how that goes. I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm not going to talk about my brother, Michael Zomboros told AP in a jailhouse interview. I'm basically being held as a political prisoner of the FBI. They want to coerce me into cooperating. Well, you're required to testify. If you don't know anything, you don't know anything. But you're required to testify. So, yeah, I mean, they gave you immunity, so your Fifth Amendment protections are gone. That's how that works. Some current and former DEA agents say Azari's claims are overblown or flat-out falsifications. The former ICE agent scoffed at Azari's accusation he took a $20,000 bribe, saying he raised early red flags about Azari. And the lawyer for the Zomboros brothers say prosecutors are on a fishing expedition to bring more indictments because of the embarrassment of the scandal. Everyone they connected to Jose is extraneous to the thefts, said the attorneys. They're looking to find a crime to fit this case as opposed to a crime that actually took place. But no matter what happens, they're going to charge somebody with something because they don't want to come after this with 5 years and only charge Jose. It's hard to believe it stops with Jose, to be completely fair. Making Azari's allegations more egregious as they came on the heels of the 2015 Inspector General's report that slammed the DEA for participating in sex parties with prostitutes hired by Colombian cartels. That prompted suspension of several agents and the retirement of Michelle Lionheart, the DEA administrator at the time. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story about a DEA corrupt agent seen here having a good time in a former life. He's definitely living that bro life in spades. And despite his many, many corruptions, he's gotten 12 years in federal prison, which, maybe it's worth it, especially if he happens to have any money stowed away for a rainy day somewhere. So, who knows? But this is apparently the tip of the iceberg on this scandal. But apparently there's good money to be made and good times to be had if you're willing to be a corrupt DEA agent. Is the DEA hiring? Is it too late? I know I'm in my 40s and all, but I'm totes great undercover. I've got a cowboy hat. It makes me mysterious. But until I get that job, that brings us to the end of the discussion of this story.